It's a difficult realm for getting hired these days. If you're listening to this and you're like, man, I filled out 100 resumes or, job applications and send out my resumes to all these, it is hard. It's not just you. It's where the industry is at the moment, unfortunately, where the economy is in the moment as well.
I was getting out of the military, and I got rejected several times, and it's just going to happen. The best thing you can do is just pick yourself up and keep going, and someone's going to give you a chance. You just don't give up, because if you give up, it will never happen.
Hi, I'm Kyser Clark, and welcome to The Hacker's Cache, the show that decrypts the secrets of offensive security one bite at a time. Every week, I invite you into the world of ethical hacking by interviewing leading offensive security practitioners. If you are a penetration tester, bug bounty hunter, red teamer, or blue teamer who wants to better understand the modern hacker mindset, whether you are new or experienced, this show is for you.
Hello, welcome to The Hacker's Cache. My name is Kyser Clark. If you don't know who I am a cybersecurity professional. I currently work as a penetration tester. I've been in the field for 6 years now. I have 12 certifications, a bachelor's degree in cybersecurity, and I'm currently working on a master's degree in cybersecurity. Today I have Jake Mayhew, who is a senior penetration tester. So he started out in threat intelligence and incident response internship, did that for about 8 months, then moved on to cyber risk management, Linux system administration, network engineering, and red teaming. He did that for about 2 years, and then moved on to a full-time red teaming and penetration testing for various organizations, and has been doing that for over 5 years. And like I said, currently working as a senior offensive security analyst and doing OSCP course instruction on the side. For education, Jake has a Bachelor of Science in Cyber Forensic and Information Security. And for certifications, this is a long list, so get ready for it. The OffSec Web Expert, that's the OSWE. The OffSec Exploit Developer, that's the OSED. The OffSec Experienced Penetration Tester, that's the OSEP. And then if you take all those and add them up, it's the OffSec Certified Expert 3, so that's the OSCE 3, the granddaddy of all OffSec certs. He also has the OffSec Certified Expert, that's the original OffSec Certified Expert, and that certification is actually no longer available to obtain. And he has the OffSec Certified Professional, that's the OSCP, the Zero Point Security Certified Red Team Operator, that's the CRTO, OffSec Defense Analyst, that's the OSDA. He's also an authorized OffSec instructor for Pen 100 and Pen 200, that's the OSIB certification. And last but not least, he has the Microsoft Certified Azure Fundamentals. So Jake, thank you so much for taking your time and doing this with me. Go ahead and unpack some of your experience and walk me through your background and introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Kaiser, thanks so much for having me on the podcast. We're officially colleagues now through ATA and the instructions. That's pretty cool. You summarized well my experience. Obviously, I'm an OffSec junkie. I'm always coming back for more pain and torture with OffSec, and I'm taking the advanced Windows exploitation and not at Black Hat, but at London in September. So that's going to be like the hubba hubbas of my OffSec experience. I hear that's the hardest one. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I am really enjoying my journey through kind of the trainings, basically. But I love how it filters into my everyday and how I can pursue, a deeper technical experience and have that feed into the training, and the training feed back into my everyday on the job training and everything. So, but anyways, yeah, so I started in college. I did an internship at Mylan. It's no longer Mylan, but I was on their data protection team, their threat intelligence team, and did a lot of work with phishing. We're going to work with DLP, but that didn't. Contracts between, like with the enterprise contracts weren't in place for my time there. So I ended up moving towards phishing and did a lot of phishing analysis and kind of built out a tool to detect potential phishing mail and stuff like that from the logs. And that was a lot of fun. It was a really good experience, and I always highly recommend anybody who's in school to pursue internships as early as possible, because that's really how you get your foot in the door if you're in college at this point. But anyways, after that, Mylan was going through hard times, and so they couldn't hire me, so I ended up being hired in a leadership development program, which is also something that I recommend people look for, because a lot of companies offer them, where they're essentially rotation programs where you go through 6 months, usually 2 years, a year, depending on the company, and you take 6-month stints on different teams. And so the company I was hired at did that, and actually my current company does that as well. And I find it's a fantastic experience for people coming out of school, and especially if you're interested in something like offensive security, you can find a company that offers information security rotation programs, and you can get experience in different realms of the industry without committing to a full job in that area. So for instance, I was able to do some Linux system administration, some network administration, and risk management, etc. And then during that time, I passed my OSCP, and I really wanted to work on their red team, which they didn't officially have. And so I moved to their vulnerability management team and helped them kind of build out the red team, basically. Then, unfortunately, my boss left at the end of that, at the end of my development program there, and I had gotten an offer through participating in our local B-sides. I went and tried the CTF there and ended up meeting a lot of people, and through that I ended up getting a job offer at CISO, a local Pittsburgh consulting company who I still do some work for and work with, and I have a really great relationship with them. They're a fantastic consulting company. And so I worked on their red team for a year or two, and really, really enjoyed that. Fantastic people there, like I said. And but my time there was kind of came to an end, and then I went to PSC, which is a part of NCC Group, which is based out of England, but it's a global company, and so they have a bunch of different offices in the U.S. And so I did kind of PCI focused pen testing there, but it was basically like red team engagements that were shorter. Obviously, they were like a week or two long, and they were focused on trying to kind of break from one environment, break access into a segmented cardholder data environment where the payment card data is stored. So that was a lot of fun. Learned a lot, but that one again, the time was up on that one, and I ended up moving back from consulting into my current company, which was a competitor of the company that I did the development program. I ended up working on their vulnerability management team and worked a lot on their penetration testing activities and so forth, and pretty much did all their offensive security stuff because that's what I really liked. Even though it was more of a vulnerability management role and title, I ended up breaking out from that team and kind of starting an offensive security team there. And then that became official a year and a half ago or so. And then we early last year hired Ryan Daub, who you had on recently, and he's been working with us ever since, and he's been an awesome addition to the team. So it's me and him, and we take on the world on an internal red team, which has been a lot of fun. And then last year, earlier on in the year, I was pursuing these OffSec certs, all throughout this journey, and the rep from OffSec was like, "Oh, would you ever want to teach?" And we have this company ATA who's they're teaching offensive security courses, and because we were talking about like how I was approaching some of the courses, and he kind of threw that bug in my ear, and I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I ended up starting to teach OffSec courses on the side, and I've really enjoyed that. I've taught the Pen 200 course maybe 4 or 5 times, and at this point, we're going to teach it at Black Hat USA this year in a couple weeks in August, which is going to be a lot of fun. And I also helped them build out kind of like a custom port of the EXP 301 or the OSEP course earlier this year, and we taught that for a client, and that was awesome. It was a lot of fun. So yeah, and I'm helping them kind of build out their Pen 300 content as well for an instructor-led training for that. So yeah, lots of fun. It's kind of where I am at the moment.
What an incredible journey. It's there's a lot of experience in there, and thanks for unpacking all that and telling your story, because especially when you're talking about internships, because that is how a lot of people get jobs, and that's probably the best way to get into a position right now, I would say, because it is a little harder to
100%.
find jobs right now. We've had a few people on this show already who have said that they got their first job through internships, so that's definitely one of the better ways to get into the field. Speaking of Ryan Dobbs, so episode number 7. That was only like, what, 3 episodes ago. We had him on the show, and he mentioned you a few times. He didn't mention you by name. The main takeaway I took away from his episode, and that's the reason why I put that clip at the beginning of his episode, was how he uploaded his pentest report to the application.
Yeah.
Because the title of that episode is "Thinking Outside the Box to Land Your First Pentesting Job." That's
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
was a big takeaway for me. And I'm kind of curious on like hearing like your perspective on from the hiring point, from seeing that come in.
Yeah, when you had mentioned that you had Ryan Daub on, I usually think of that experience with him in hiring and how he stood out. And I've mentioned that a number of times towards job seekers, people who are having a little bit of tough time and they're looking for tips. He was very proactive in expressing his interest and his skill set, and he just went an extra mile, and that really caused him to stand out amongst the top 4 or 5 applicants that we had. And the main thing was through him providing like a pen test report of his home lab and stuff like that. We didn't have any other applicants that did something like that. We interviewed a number of other people and they had really great resumes, but it wasn't a good fit. And we were in an interesting spot because we work for an internal team. It's not a consulting, like a smaller boutique consulting company or anything like that. So we're subject to HR's rules, and we have to play there by the rule set. So we weren't allowed to offer a challenge or any like technical competency test. We just had to do our phone screenings, interview, 1 or 2 interviews, and then make a decision. And so him proactively sending us like essentially a technical challenge that I would have given him really helped him stand out. And then he did a fantastic job in the interview. And he was able to intelligently answer the questions and even the stuff he was a little bit, uncomfortable with, and, where I was kind of pushing to see what the limits were. He did a really good job handling the pressure and also speaking to what he could speak to in each thing. And I generally try to push the limits of like, okay, tell me how much you know about DNS, or, tell me how much you know about, the TLS handshake, or, something like that. And just, if they don't know much about it, that's totally fine. But I just kind of want to push the limits and see how they respond. And he did a really great job with that. But I definitely recommend that if you are in your job search journey and you're having a tough time, first of all, set up a home lab. This is what Daub did. We have a couple Ryans on our team, so I always refer to him as Daub. So he set up a home lab, and he researched a bunch of penetration testing techniques, and he was doing some trainings and stuff, and he was actually taking this content that he was learning and he was applying it in his home lab. And then he went a step further and actually wrote a report as if he was actually presenting it to a client. And so that was just really tipped the scales for us to hire him, and he's been phenomenal ever since. So I hope that encourages those of you who are still in your journey, or you're wondering how you can stand out, and you're like, oh, I don't have these certifications, or I don't have this or that. There are other ways that you can stand out, and there are people who want to take chances on folks who have a lot of potential but might not have all of the experience or training. So there are people out there. So don't give up.
You said home lab. So do you think the same effect could be accomplished if someone just did a report on like a hack the box machine or like a try hack me room?
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you, for instance, me, I don't have a home lab. I mean, I do have a home lab in one sense, but I don't have like what Ryan had built. I usually use my training platforms or Hack the Box, something like that, to cut my teeth on whatever I'm studying or preparing for. So if that's not something you have the bandwidth or the resources to be able to, buy a system that has enough resources to run a home lab or something like that, you can absolutely just throw up a Medium blog and just write how to walk through a certain system in Hack the Box or the OffSec PG Play or try hack me or whatever your platform of choice is, and just share with the world how you're learning and take them along with your journey. And then that's something that hiring managers can look at, and they can get a chance even before meeting you of what your technical competencies are. Like, oh, this person knows how to run an Nmap scan and knows how to exploit a SQL injection manually and knows how to these different classes of vulnerabilities because they've shown up in their reports, or rather their blog posts in that case.
For me, when I was, applying, I wrote up 2 try hacking rooms and I wrote up 2 hack the box machines. And I think I have like 10-ish, maybe 15-ish hack the box walkthroughs on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I think on my resume, I would put like, YouTube channel, blog.
Mm-hmm.
But like, maybe they're not looking at them, maybe if I would have just took the PDF and uploaded it to the report, then they would have actually saw it more, I mean, I just assumed that like if I wrote YouTuber and blog, they would just automatically check it out. So, actually uploading it to the report and not just letting it sit on the internet and hope they find it, that's like next level advice in my opinion. So, it's good
absolutely.
that he thought of that, because have you ever heard of that before, like, at all? Because I
No,
haven't.
I've never seen anybody do that, but that's kind of why it stood out. So I'm sure
Yeah.
hopefully people will start doing that more often, and because it will bear fruit.
What is some like really good advice that someone could apply as well? That's not like the general advice. Do you have any other like secret tips to success when it comes to searching for a job?
Yeah. So I did write a blog post about people who are in college for something like cybersecurity or computer science, and they want to move into the field. And what I think you're getting at is I tend to have 3 or 4 things that I recommend to people. The first is what we already covered, which is a home lab, and that's a pretty standard recommendation. Usually, if somebody's like, "Oh, I'm looking for a job," then somebody kind of on the more experienced end will be like, "Well, you have a home lab, right? If you don't have a home lab, don't expect to get a job, at least in a technical cybersecurity role." I'm sure are pretty common, but for me, I like to mention are going to local conferences and local meetups and so forth. I touched on this before, but when I was but my first consulting job I got through going to B-Sides. I'm from the Pittsburgh area, so I went to B-Sides Pittsburgh, and they had a capture the flag competition, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to get anywhere in this capture the flag competition, but I want to join it because I want to see what it's all about. And that year was at this venue that had an abandoned school bus, and we were all in this abandoned school bus hacking away, and they had access point there, and it was a lot of fun, and I ended up getting to know other people in the industry, and I didn't do phenomenally well, but I think people noticed that I was there and that I was, interested enough to be involved in the community, and also just going for a CTF and just trying it. Those are the things that kind of stand out. A lot of people are looking for that passion and that desire to just be involved and just get exposure to different experiences on the technical side of things. So through that, I was able to forge some relationships, and then as a result of that, we called it the hack bus. We had like this Slack channel, but I was just on there. I was just asking questions. I was going through the old OSCE at the time, and so I was just on there. I was like, hey, can I have some tips? Or I have these questions. Like, I don't know how this is working. I can't get this exploit to work. Those different things. And the guy was like, hey, you are asking really good questions. Do you want a job? And I'm like, oh, sure. Okay, let's talk about this. And so that was really cool. And I definitely recommend people do that, because those are the type of things that stand out. If you're asking questions, people notice. And you might think I always thought they were dumb questions that I was asking. I always thought I was like pestering people. But for some reason that just kind of, it shows where you are. It shows what you're working on. It shows what your projects are. Hey, if you're asking a question about Windows exploitation, people know what you're working on, and they know that you are exploring these different topics and the level of depth that you're at, and at times they might see potential. So I highly recommend people getting involved in like a local B-Sides conference. Many bigger cities have a B-Sides these days, but also a lot have other like weekly, monthly, bi-monthly meetups that the local cybersecurity community gets together and somebody presents on something. At a high level, what we're talking about is networking, and is really the big things. But these are some practical outworkings, because people will say, "Oh, well, you got a network." But this is what it looked like in my life, and what I typically recommend for other folks. Then the other thing is to get certified. Pursue something. Don't just sit where you are and expect to get hired somewhere and then have them develop you. Work on it now. And it doesn't have to be an OffSec cert. I know that's what I've targeted for a long time, but there's a lot of resources. There's like the hack the box certs that are a lot cheaper, but in some instances they're better or at least as good as some of the other ones. And there's just a lot more resources. There's Try Hack Me. There's just the Hack the Box labs and all that kind of stuff where you can just continually cut your teeth. And that's what people want to see is like, is this person continuously learning? Are they continually going back to how they can improve their skill set, something new that they can learn? And those are the types of things that really stand out on resumes.
Great. Yeah. Thanks for explaining that. And yeah, local meetups is something I actually haven't done yet. And I was actually, I finally got into a position where I could get in some local meetups, and I'm in Alaska, and there's like not a lot up here. So
Yeah,
it's
I
very
understand.
unfortunate. So let's go ahead and get on our rapid fire questions here.
Okay.
So for the new listeners, Jake will have 30 seconds to answer 5 questions. If he answers 5 questions in 30 seconds, he's going to get a bonus 6 question not related to cybersecurity. Time will start when I stop asking the first question. Are you ready?
All right, I'm ready.
What is the most unique device that you have ever hacked?
A sponge counter medical device.
Favorite hacking tool?
Nmap. And Google.
Favorite hacker movie /show /game?
Ooh, sneakers.
Favorite hacking certification?
I'll go with OSCP.
What color font is your terminal?
Lucida console.
Okay, that was a little over 30 seconds. That was actually about 36. Let's talk about your favorite hacker movie /show. So sneakers, is that a show or a movie?
It's a movie. It was from, phew, honestly, it's the only one that I could think of at the moment. So, I haven't seen. Is there just like it's just a movie just called Hackers, right? I haven't seen that. I started it at one point, I think, but I never finished it. Really, the only one that I could think of was Sneakers, which is with Robert Redford, and they show him kind of breaking into a bank at the beginning. Now it's like 90s computer. I kind of like the old retro hacking kind of style and everything like that. So it's an older movie at this point. But yeah, it's an enjoyable flick.
Yeah, I honestly have never watched a hacker movie. I am not a movie person. I just don't watch a lot of movies. I disappoint all my friends,
I feel
family, and
that.
colleagues all the time. They're like, "You never seen that movie?" I'm like, "Nope." And people get so mad at me. And it's just I haven't watched Sneakers. And I've heard about it. I might get to it one day. However, so if I was asked that question, I would say Mr. Robot. So I have actually watched Mr. Robot,
Okay.
one of the few shows where I've watched every episode from beginning to end.
Okay. I hear it's very realistic.
Everything in that show was very plausible and you can see the terminal and you can see like, hey, Kali Linux, and you're like, oh, they like I know that command. It's like
Yeah.
cool stuff like that. I don't know. I thought the ending was a little rough, and I didn't really like the mega use of drugs. But other than that, the
Ah,
hacking was good. That part was good.
yeah. Cool. Yeah, I've heard that.
He said, ask questions about what you're working on. So the thing that I'm working on, OSCE 3. That's
Yeah.
one of the things I would like to get, and obviously you gotta have 3 certs to do that. And I've actually dabbled in the Pen 300 course, and
Hmm.
I'm not gonna lie, I've struggled with that Pen 300 course, and I
Yep.
passed OSCP on my first try. OSCP, it was hard, but it wasn't. I didn't fail a bunch of times like some people do, and I thought OSCP, like everything that was being taught, it was just it made a lot of sense to me. But then
Hmm.
moving on to Pen 300, it was like a whole another level. So my question is, you know, someone like me who has OSCP and they're trying to get the OSEP or another
Hmm.
one of those 300 level certifications, can they use the same techniques and the same training method to get those higher level, or do they need to like engage like another level of thinking or take the course approach the course differently? What do you think about that?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and I wouldn't say I had to do too much different. And I'll actually say that for me, when I took on the OCP, I failed it twice. for those of you that have failed it. I failed it twice, because I started from zero. Like I was just like, I want to do this for a living. I think it's really cool. I never thought that I could do something bad for a good cause. Like I didn't know I could hack into something for good and that'd be legal and cool and actually help people. So I was like, I want to do this, and I saw the OSCP, I saw the challenge of it. It was definitely the apex predator at the time when I took it, as far as pen testing certs. And so when I started with that, I really had very little technical knowledge and even less experience, actual practical experience. So I would like find a couple blogs of like, okay, hacking WPA2 or, something like that. And I would try to follow through with those. But, I just dove in. I just like jumped head first in. And, I was up till like 2 a.m., learning about Linux and the different file permissions for exploiting, local privilege escalation vectors and all that kind of stuff. So I had to work really, really hard. And just a quick tip, I mentioned that I failed it twice. I always recommend just take it if you're in the process for any of these exams. Just take it even if you don't think you'll pass. Take the exam anyway, because you'll gain just as much experience taking the exam as spending a week studying or something, because it will help you get familiar with the exam environment. It will help you understand what level of challenge it is, and it will help you see where your weaknesses are, and then you can feed that into your training. But this is my roundabout way of saying I had to work really hard for OSCP, and then I started working in the industry and picking up a lot other skills where the other ones were very challenging, but I had a much better foundation at that point, and so I could draw upon these other experiences and skill sets that I had to work for. So it was definitely a different, for my personal journey, it was a lot different in that I had experience that I could draw on for those three, higher level ones versus OSCP where I had nothing. And it was kind of like struggling in the dark, for me, especially at the beginning there. So as far as OSEP, OSEP is I find it's a very valuable and great certification. It's a fantastic next step if your goal is to do network penetration testing. I would also pair that with the CRTO for a non-OffSec cert, because it's more red team focused, and Pen 300 is specifically penetration testing focused. But they're not advanced. Neither of those are advanced. They don't really touch EDR evasion. It's really kind of old school AV, especially for the Pen 300. And so as we're developing content for the ATA course, we're actually covering more EDR and stuff, because there's not a pen test I've been on in the past couple of years that hasn't had an EDR that I've had to fight. So yeah, definitely becoming the common target there. But anyways, more to your question, to try to bring this back to what you were saying. I found with the Pen 300 material, if you go through all of the content and you start building your tool sets as you're going through it, by the time you hit the end, if you go through the labs, you'll do fine on the exam. I actually found that the Pen 300 exam was one of the easier ones, but that also came from my perspective of I had been doing network pen tests for 3 or 4 years at that point, so it was a lot more second nature. The harder one for me was the OSWE, because I was not a developer. There was a lot of code to review. Like, you had to learn to debug different development environments. That one I had to work a lot harder for, but it was very rewarding. And then with OSED, that one also was a little bit different of a situation, because I had to work really hard to pursue the OSCE, the old OSCE, that covered a lot of binary exploitation. And so I'd say about 80% of the topics in OSED were covered in the old OSCE, if that makes sense. So because I had to work so hard for that, again, that was kind of similar to the OSCP, where I didn't know anything about low-level Windows binary exploitation or user mode exploit development or anything like that. I had to work very hard at that. So by the time I got to OSED, it was, the muscle memory had already been established for a lot of that. So, yeah, I don't know if that helps or if that really answers your question, or if you have any follow-ups on that. I know I jumped around a bit there.
Yeah, so I mean, like you said you did some more network penetration testing. So maybe for me, it's maybe I just need to be in the field a little bit more and do some real world pen tests, and then I can kind of put it all together. Because I went through the Pen 300 twice, and I went to the first challenge, and I got the first flag, and then after that, I was like, I have no idea
Yeah.
what I'm doing here. Yeah, it's definitely hard, and like you said, I think that's good advice too. Taking the exam, even if you're not all that ready for it. I'm currently working on OSWA, so I
Oh,
paused the
nice.
Pen 300 and I started
Hmm.
working on OSWA, and I've actually failed that one twice now. I guess the OSWA, like when I went through that course, it all made a lot of sense to me, and
Hmm.
I almost passed, like I'm like just barely missed it,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
but the Pen 300, I was like, man, I feel like there's a lot of things I'm not there's like I'm accumulating like knowledges, but I don't know how to connect the dots, and that's
Hmm.
that's the struggle I'm having is like connecting the dots and like when to look for what. I'll figure it out eventually, but yeah, it's maybe it's just I need to do more network pen tests, and maybe that's the answer to that question.
Yeah, gaining a level of comfort in that realm will definitely, like, as you continue, especially in this new role. Congrats on the new job, by the way. As
Thank
you're
you.
doing more network pen tests, you'll come across things that you'll have to dig deeper into, and then it will kind of naturally come through you challenging yourself in that way. But also, as far as the prep work, I highly recommend using the Discord. There's no shame in asking. I always ask questions. I would kind of push and see how far they would let you ask questions and stuff like that, because there was definitely situations where I was like, oh, I don't know where to go with this. I don't know where to go with this challenge or whatever. The fifth challenge, I recently did that. If you want to target it, and you're welcome to ask me some questions or bounce some ideas on off of that. But the fifth challenge is pretty close to what the exam looks like. Fifth and the sixth challenges, and I felt like it was fairly straightforward. Some of it is actually kind of OSCP level, and then there's like harder portions of it that really test the Pen 300 level topics, with like Kerberos on Linux and things like that, and AV evasion, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I'm happy to help you if you have any like specific questions. I won't give away any secrets, but I'm happy to bounce some ideas if you need that.
Okay, yeah, I probably will take you up on that when I pass OSWA and go back to Pen 300, because that's where I'm gonna go back as soon as I
Hmm.
get through OSWA.
Yeah,
And yeah, definitely. Hopefully, I'll probably just go through the course again for a third time, and then
yeah.
take better or like make better notes and try to connect the dots better. And then yeah, if I have any questions, I'll definitely reach out. And like you said, the Discord, there's no shame in using Discord, because I have tons of questions in that
Hmm.
Discord
Hmm.
from the Pen 300, because there's yeah, it was hard. And I also ask questions for the OSCP as well, and even OSWA. So like I ask questions in there all the time. Definitely try your hardest at first, and then have a list of things that you've tried, because
Hmm.
that's the first thing they're gonna ask you. What did you try? And then
Yeah,
if you don't
yeah.
have a list of things that you've tried, then they're not gonna help you.
Hmm. For sure. Yeah, yeah. I've heard different. I've gotten different responses when I've talked to people who've done at least two or three of those 300 level courses. Some people are like, OSEP was the hardest one, bar none. OSWE was the easiest one, and then other people are like, oh, OSED was just like the worst because I've never written an exploit before, like stuff like that. So it really depends on what your background is, and if you do web app tests and you're have a development background or something, OSWE is probably going to be a cake. Relatively speaking, no offsec exam is going to be a cakewalk, but relatively speaking, that might be easier. And then the OSEP or something might be really difficult. But just personally for me, the other thing I wanted to say is that's a pretty common story with those who are going through OSCP as well. Is hey, I went through all of this content, it all made sense, but then you hit the labs and it's like I don't know how to put all these things together. And that's one thing that I really love helping students with when I teach the course as well, is like, okay, now we're going to take all these and we're gonna put them all together, and we're going to learn how to do this in the context of a test in this greater environment, rather than just looking at this one particular technique of SQL injection or whatever. We're going to see how it fits in to this target environment in, by proxy the exam as well. So yeah, it's definitely a different skill set once you get to the actual challenges and everything.
Yeah, and I think I want to add into another thing you said. It depends on your background. It depends on how much or how little you're going to struggle in each course. But I also think it also depends on what do you got going on in your life too. So
Yes.
when you said that, I was like, oh, when I was going through OSEP, I was actually doing a military transition, which is like one of the hardest things you can actually do. And so maybe that played a part in it. Maybe now that
Absolutely.
I'm settled in my role and I can focus on just the certification more. So yeah, that definitely probably played a factor too, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so unfortunately, we are already out of time. Man, this has been a lot of good information, and so I'm gonna ask you the final question.
Okay.
Do you have any additional cybersecurity hot takes or hidden wisdom you'd like to share?
My hot take is it's a difficult realm for getting hired these days. So don't feel bad and don't give up. If you're listening to this and you're like, man, I filled out 100 resumes or job applications and send out my resumes to all these different. It is hard. It's not just you. It's where the industry is at the moment, unfortunately, where the economy is in the moment as well. And so don't feel bad, but also don't give up. And there are people that are willing to give you a shot, and there are people that are looking for passion and interest just as much as technical skills and ability. So keep your eye out and get involved in the community, and you'll see something materialize. But also be patient, but don't give up. So it's more encouragement than
That's great.
tips, but
That's great advice. And I was getting out of the military, and I got rejected several times, and it's just gonna happen, And even with OSCP and I had like almost 70 hack the box machines done, 216 try hack me rooms. I know all this because I had to say it in an interview a bunch of times.
yeah, yeah,
And even with all the stuff and all my write-ups that I did, it's like I still face rejection. So yeah, it's gonna happen. It's just the best thing you can do is just pick yourself up and keep
hmm
going. And
hmm
someone's gonna give you a chance. You just gotta don't give up, because if you give up, it will never happen.
yep, yep, for sure.
All right, Jake, thank you so much for your time and attention to this episode. I really do appreciate you taking the time and doing this with me. And I got a lot of value out of this, and I'm sure the audience did as well. So, where can the audience reach you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, sure. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. It's just Jake Mayhew, and I think I'm the only Jake Mayhew in cybersecurity. We'll see. Maybe that's wrong, but um, you should be able to find me pretty easily. And then I have a blog as well on Medium. I've written up all my OffSec courses and stuff like that. So you can, if you're interested in like, hey, which course to take next, can check out those reviews and what content is covered and this difficulty level and stuff like that of those different courses. And I'm starting my own podcast with a friend. It's totally unrelated to cybersecurity. It's more of actually a theology podcast. It's called Simply Devoted. So if you're into that kind of thing, you can check our podcast out. Podcast that'll be coming out in a couple weeks here. So yeah, those are the three main ways. Oh, I'm also on the OffSec Discord, Mayhem. It's Mayh3M. So that's the handle I go by. So you can ping me there as well.
Perfect. And audience, for me, best way to reach me is LinkedIn and my website, kyserclark.com. Thanks for hanging out. Leave feedback if you haven't left me feedback already, and review the show if you haven't done that yet already as well. And other than that, just check out the next episode when it comes out. This is Kyser, signing off.